So good morning to all of you as we share these little boxes together. Welcome to our Zoom Shuso Hosen Zazen Kai. We're preparing to celebrate our new senior student, Kojin, as he prepares his first talk and his Dharma dialogue, his encounter with the Village Zendo Sangha tomorrow. And at the same time, many of us are grieving. We are experiencing the loss of our longtime Sangha member and Village Zendo teacher, Kaku Sensei, also known as the Reverend Bob Gum. Kaku Sensei passed into the folds of time yesterday morning after a short illness, a recurrence of his cancer. Blessedly, his two daughters were with him, and all of us, I am sure, were with him in his heart. So we will continue to think of and speak of Kaku Sensei, and we will memorialize him, as is our custom, for the next 49 days. And we will culminate that with a large Maha memorial service for our beloved Kaku. Sun face, moon face. The sun rises and the moon sets. The sun brings clarity, light, insight about our day-to-day life in this life that we have. So I'm going to ask you now to turn your hearts and minds to another aspect of this moment. We've just completed a really creative and relevant urban session, a 3-day plunge into practice of awareness. Our Shuso Kojin structured our retreat as a way for us to recognize the practice of past, present, and future in terms of this world that we live in now, at this time, and in terms of our own lives, our life in this world and how it affects others. Here at the Village Zendo Zoomland, we've heard lots of talks during this Ango, and we've shared our experiences of this time in terms of our lives, in terms of the world events, and in terms of how we can serve each other and how we can serve the world. So this is the next to last day of 90 days, our intensive practice period, our Ango. You have heard that phrase over and over again. Wonder what it means, Ango. Peaceful dwelling, peaceful go dwelling. It implies a space-time continuum where and when we might allow ourselves to become more intimate with our own mind, ourself, and intimate with the world around us, and seeing that they are not two. To perhaps experience the world as one, not two. to be present in our lives, no matter what, is a peaceful dwelling. So, when I still take a newspaper every day and read endlessly on my cell phone, endlessly, how can I dwell peacefully in this changing world? What is it to present myself, or what is it for you to present yourself at the top of the moment? Not before the moment or not after it, but right here, like right now. It's not about anticipating, nor reminiscing, nor theorizing, but presencing now. So throughout this Ango, all of the wonderful talks that have been given, so many of the interviews that I've participated in and listened to have focused on Dogen's study of time, his deep meditation of the relationship between the self and this idea we have of time and how it affects how we are in the world. Inspired by that study, I would say that we've heard a lot of talks and we've shared experiences together of time in terms of the world and in terms of serving and caring for ourselves and others. And what about Dogen, this 13th century Japanese master? How does he say it in Uji? I want to talk about the section where he talks about flowing today. Let me read a little bit and then we'll take it in bit by bit. Do not think flowing is like wind and rain moving from east to west. The entire world is not unchangeable. It is not immovable. It flows. Then he says, flowing is like spring. Spring with all its numerous aspects is called flowing. When spring flows, there is nothing outside of spring. Study this in detail. He goes on. Spring invariably flows through spring. Although flowing itself is not spring, flowing occurs throughout spring. Thus, flowing is completed at just this moment of spring. Examine this thoroughly, coming and going. And then the last part. In your study of flowing, if you imagine the objective to be outside yourself and that you flow and move through hundreds and thousands of worlds for hundreds and thousands and myriads of eons, you have not devotedly studied the Buddha way. So today, most poignantly, we can understand what Dogen says about this quality of time being. It's like spring. We can feel it because spring is here now. Actually, in the rules that we have about the world, the spring equinox is actually next Saturday, when spring officially begins. And it lasts all the way until the summer solstice in June. Last week, our Sangha member, So Young, posted a radiant nature video on the IO group. And he captioned it this way: spring is on the way. In the park, crocus, snowdrops, and witch hazel are blooming. And winter honeysuckle already bloomed weeks ago. He was talking about the park in Brooklyn, here, now. I'm sure his words resonated with some of you because the changing season is right in front of us. This very morning, I took a short walk outside and I saw the early pink buds of peony pressing against the cold spring morning. They were like, mm. And that reminded me of a haiku written during the incarceration of the Japanese Americans during World War II. Okamoto Shiho was a man who was arrested by the FBI in February 1942 because he was Japanese American. He was a farmer. He wrote this poem. Being arrested, at home the peony bud still firm. Being arrested, at home, the peony bud still firm. He didn't need to say spring, nor suffering, nor injustice. He's all there in his simple haiku. Being arrested, at home, the peony bud still firm. And through that poem, if we think about how we are, all of us today, connected to Okamoto and the peony in the garden and the children in the immigration camps on the border and the many unjustly incarcerated because they were born in the wrong place, in the wrong class, in the wrong race. And we live in a world and in a country where there is a troubling populism. And it's all connected in being time. We are not separate from that. We can't say, no, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of the history of the incarceration of the Japanese, of the incarceration of those coming up from the South, of what has happened in this country over the past 4 years. We are mutually interconnected and mutually responsible. Here's the way Dogen writes about continuity and change. Do not think flowing is like a wind and rain moving from the east to west. The entire world is not unchangeable, is not unmovable. It flows. Flowing is like spring. Spring, with all its numerous aspects, is called flowing. When spring flows, there is nothing outside of spring. Study this in detail. What does he mean by flowing? Let me just say a word about translation here. I'm so admiring of Kaz Tanahashi's use of the Japanese word kyoraku, flowing, in this whole section. There are other, admirable translations. For example, Abe uses the term passage. Continuous existence is used by another translator. Moving by Uchiyama. And moment by moment, which turned out to be Uchiyama's preference after being explained the differences in English. But for me, flowing recognizes this aspect gives us a chance to realize our own fluidity, even a fluidity of self, as in mood, as in age, as in situation, a fluidity in the environment that we swim in. How what happened in this place where each of us are 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000, 10,000 years ago, is also present here and in our bodies and minds. When we can fully take in this kyoraku, this flowing, we're able to engage our lives fully. You know, many years ago, I tried to express this word, kyoraku, in a visual mode. I tried, how can I express this? And I stood on the corner of 6th Avenue and 48th Street and recorded the passage of the taxis going by in the rain, one after the other, rapidly moving in and out of traffic. It was kind of a brilliant dance of movement, of flow. So today I might record the flow of bicycles across the city, bicycles and people in demonstrations and the deliveries and the flow of time here in this ever moving now. Dogen reminds us, in your study of flowing, if you imagine the objective to be outside yourself and that you flow and move through hundreds and thousands of worlds for hundreds and thousands of myriads of eons, you have not devotedly studied the Buddha way. Well, that's pretty awful, isn't it? We all think we're studying the Buddha way. And then he's like, if you haven't, what is the guidance he's giving us there? He's telling us to be inside the moment, which includes everyone and everything that is in this moment with us, like this moment right now. It includes also all past moments and the future ones. So I see Dogen as directing our gaze, directing our ears to the sounds of the world and not our ideas that we might have of our personal enlightenment or some sort of special state that we can attain outside of the flow of life as it is. The flowers bloom and the flowers die. We may want to take a pass on the climate crisis or of the necessity for reparations or on wokeism or on the rise of a reactionary nationalist movement in the whole world. But we can't take a pass on it because we are a part of this kyoraku, of this flow of life, here and now, and now, and now. It's as if we're swimming in this great wave and there is sand and seaweed and bubbles and current, and we cannot stop and we cannot withdraw. We can't isolate and seek our personal enlightenment as if it is a separate holy thing. but we swim in the wave that we're in. And we lend a hand. We activate our Buddha nature in our realization of flow with all those swimming with us. As Dogen says, if you imagine the objective to be outside yourself, you have not devotedly studied the Buddha way. And know how much we all want to devotedly study the Buddha way. So what does he tell us? Let's look at this week of Sesshin practice, where our Shuso, Kojin, led us to an understanding of exactly what Dogen is talking about. We've been considering social justice through the prism of time. Or as Dogen says, it flows. And maybe it sounds counterintuitive. This flow, this changing world can be captured actually in ritual practice. We could even say that often the function of ritual is to serve the realization, our realization of the flow of time and being. Ritual helps us to skillfully move to the next moment of time and being. And we are all right now in the process of ritual practice. And tomorrow will be even more so when we initiate Kojin, our Shuso, as a senior student. The process of taking leadership, of serving as Shuso, is both a ritual process and just ordinary life at a Zen center. When a student has studied koans for several years, they may be asked to serve as Shuso, to lead the community through 90 days of practice, and to finalize the process with Shuso Hosen, a chance for the community Sangha to hear the student give his or her first Dharma talk and to defend it in Dharma dialogue, which in the old days we called Dharma combat, but now we call it Dharma dialogue because we have improved. So later today, we're going to post his koan in the chat. I'm not sure how actually that someone will explain exactly how we're going to post his koan, but you'll have a chance to read it and sign up to have a dialogue with Kojin tomorrow after his talk. He began his practice here with the Village Zendo in 2015 and received his Jukai in 2016. And he was given the Dharma name Kojin, which means the light of love illuminating humanity. That's pretty heavy. You give somebody a name like that, they have to work hard. Kojin took 1 year off from the Village Zendo. Instead, he studied intensively at Zen Mountain Center in the mountains of California with Tenshin Roshi and Jokai Sensei, and a band of intrepid Zen students. The practice there is intense and rather hard. I know because I also studied there over several summers when Maizumi Roshi was still alive in the early 90s. It's a beautiful space and a hard practice center. So Kojin came back to us last spring, and he's been very active in organizing our website and many of our programs. He's also active in protection work during demonstrations that push against racism and police brutality. He's one of the people that white people that take their bikes and stay on the outside of the group to protect them from any kind of violence that might occur. So tomorrow he gives his first talk and offers a dialogue for all of us. Let us honor Koshin's work tomorrow by showing up and asking questions and listening to his talk. And in closing, I want us to remember that Japanese American farmer, Mr. Okamoto Shiho, who remembered the peony that was about to bloom in his garden as he was arrested for being Japanese during the war. His poem, Being Arrested at Home, Peony Bud Still Firm. I'd like to juxtapose with my poem. Ending arrests, we celebrate the peony. Now is the time.